I must admit that I have killed. They 3 months early on, I killed about 3 people.
The Filipino drug war started in 2016 when the country got a new president, Rodrigo Duterte.
I have seen how illegal drugs destroy individuals and ruin family relationships.
Killing drug users and dealers was one of his main campaign promises.
Fight will be relentless and it will be sustained.
So, I've come to Manila, the Philippines, and this city over the past few years, when it comes to the topic I talk about on this channel, it's become well known for one thing, and it's a drug war that's actually being fought so violently that it made world news. The new president, Duterte, announced that he would feed all drug users and pushers to the fishes. And hey, hello. It's been also no, not Americano.
I'm actually a journalist from Amsterdam. I hardly know anything about the Philippines, but I do understand drugs and their history pretty well. This scene here on this square in Tondo is something I learned in journalism school to show you that yes, I indeed went to Manila to talk to people, to understand the Filipino drug war better, and to gather stories. On camera and off camera. I now know that when I recorded this, I had actually already been influenced by myths that Duterte had spread.
And just crystal meth, like the whole thing about that drug is...
I realized later I had a lot more research to do. Some things I did grasp then.
One thing that I do think about the drug war in the Philippines is that it shows very well, like it's almost like its purest form, why current prohibition doesn't work. Why the cost of prohibition is higher than the actual benefit of people not using certain drugs.
So let's not start in Manila, but in Vienna. Vienna? Yes. Vienna, the capital of Austria and the seat of the United Nations Office Against Drugs and Crime. There I got introduced to the Filipino drug war, while attending a meeting by the Commission on Narcotic Drugs, the CND, which governs the international drug laws of the United Nations. I'll save these intensely boring meetings for a future video about Vienna, why these people maintain that cannabis is as dangerous as heroin, for example.
Silent, please.
But the Philippines I found in the lobby, where governments were showing off their efforts to eradicate drugs. This special exhibition consisted only of countries known for their low levels of corruption and high respect for human rights.
Here's Saudi Arabia, over there is Russia, Iran, Indonesia, and there's the Philippines.
I had heard and read about the Filipino drug war, but hadn't talked to anyone from the Philippines yet. So this was my chance.
The Philippines has a lot of entry points for the methamphetamine. So that's the problem with the syndicates. It's a big business.
I see over there drug-free communities by 2022.
Yes, that is our vision. We hope to achieve drug-free communities by 2022 through the implementation of aggressive supply reduction efforts coupled with drug demand reduction strategies. And we also want to ensure that these strategies respect the rule of law and also human rights.
Hitler massacred 3 million Jews. Now, there is 3 million, there's a 3 million drug addicts. There are. I'd be happy to slaughter them.
This is called the Philippine Anti-Illegal Drug Strategy, or PADS for short. PADS is a comprehensive, balanced, and holistic approach.
If Germany had Hitler, the Philippines would have, but, my victims.
It is basically composed of two major strategies, the drug demand and drug supply reduction. But we also take note of cross-cutting concerns like alternative development, civic awareness and response, and regional and international cooperation. So,
These are the magazines for the youth, different age groups, for children in school.
You know what this story is about?
Yeah, that just don't get into drugs. The children are taught now how to say no.
What happens if they do? What if you do become a drug dealer?
Actually, we have laws for the children. So they will be taught, the parents will be called, there will be like a seminar.
Yeah.
You know that your children have gone into this, but they have to be back to the parents because they're children.
Yeah.
I thank the ladies for their explanation and also for their very interesting infographics, but understood that they were not going to give me a good understanding of the reality of Duterte's drug war. For that, I'd have to go to the Philippines.
My campaign against drug will not stop until the last pusher and the last drug lord are
These are photos made by journalist Vincent Go. I met him together with photojournalist brother Jun Santiago while they were on a night watch next to a morgue, waiting for news of a killing that might have happened in Manila. They saw many of the dead of the drug war with their own eyes.
A lot of these so-called police officers wanted to impress, wanted to suck up on the new president, so they started to kill.
An honest attempt to calculate the human toll of Duterte's drug war is called the Drug Archive. The Drug Archive counts all deaths reported in the media, and although incomplete, it seems to be the most verifiable data available. This data shows the first year after Duterte got elected. It shows that his presidency indeed started with a wave of killings. After that, events seem to lead to ups and downs in the amount of murders. 7% of people were found dead with no witnesses, but with signs accusing them of a drug connection. 38% were not killed by police but by unknown, often disguised assailants. But 55% of all the killings were done by policemen during official operations. In total, it shows more than 5,000 deaths in just the first year under Duterte. This is most surely an undercount. Some other estimates run as high as 20,000. Yun and Vincent went to so many of these killings, they quickly found out their Google Maps account wasn't able to handle so many saved locations.
My other account is already full. There are about 373. So I created another one.
Too many killings for Google to save them all. You were out of little dots.
Running out of space to fit them in. Well, I don't want to count. I have to know their name, their stories, and their about them. And just putting them like 1, 2, 3, 4.
The two journalists are part of a group called the NIGHTCRAWLERS, an alliance of journalists who have documented the drug war. Yun and Vincent have an endless repository of stories that never saw media attention.
You could see the powder burns. So he was shot at close range.
Is he being abducted or killed?
Abducted. These are police officers.
These are police officers.
Yeah.
And of unclaimed bodies in the morgue.
They don't have names. Maybe the family doesn't know that they're already dead.
This guy had Shabu planted on?
Yeah, he's an old guy. Most of them are like that. Most of them, this guy was killed in a police encounter.
And then how often do they plant Shabu on it?
Majority of the times.
The majority of the times. Simply to have an excuse.
Yeah.
How many of these examples do you have? Like of all these like weird, all these weird things happening.
A lot. It's really stupid, and they are really stupid to think that we will really believe their stories.
More drug pushers and users have voluntarily surrendered to authorities, and the number of drug deaths only 4.
The story, as Duterte sold it in the media, was that drugs were destroying the youth and thereby the future of the nation.
do not destroy my country do not destroy our young people. Because if you do that, I will kill you.
The result was a bloodbath.
My son is not a dog or a pig to kill like them.
And the people assaulted were powerless against all this state violence.
How normal is this for the Philippines?
This is everything from 2016, July of 2016 is not normal. Nothing is normal anymore. Before I used to cover the night shift. Our highlight for the night was if there was a fire, if there's a raid in the bar. Those are the highlights of the night. Yeah, we also get killings at times, sometimes, but not like this. People are systematically getting killed because allegedly for being a drug user. That is something very abnormal.
Pero sa isang operasyon ng Binyan City Police, may nanlaban at napatay na suspect na kabilang sa drug watch list.
He's ordered police to shoot to kill if suspects resist arrest.
Facts are rare things in Duterte's drug war.
Police say when they arrived at the scene, Lucero immediately shot at them.
In war, the truth is usually the first casualty.
Itinanggi naman ng mga suspect ang paratang nasangkot sila sa transaksyon ng illegal na droga.
Sabi po nila ma'am, verification lang kami.
And because drugs are illegal, those who use or sell them cannot show themselves as regular people. But look at it through a different lens, and it's a violent oppression of what's essentially a market for self-medication. This violent oppression of people involved with drugs is a worldwide phenomenon called the drug war, originally started by the United States of America. But nowhere has the drug war been so open, so blatantly aggressive as in the Philippines under Duterte.
If I become president, it will be bloody. Because we'll order the killing of all criminals, ang mga durugista at drug lord.
It will take years for stories to emerge about the wave of violence that swept over the Philippines after Duterte got elected. But it's not like these killings are without consequence. At this demonstration that I visited, victims of Duterte's drug war tried to call for answers about their missing loved ones. I spoke to one of the student organizers of this protest. I wrote down his name, but I can't seem to find it anywhere. Considering the long arm of the Philippine National Intelligence and recent threats to critical students, that's probably better for everyone.
If anybody can be killed without due process or even without, you don't even know what the charge is, then of course you'll be scared. Like lots of people are scared to even go out at night because they might be approached by policemen or other agents of the law, and then they'll be asked, what are you doing out late? Where are you going? And then of course there are lots of people who disappear or seen murdered the next day, so they're scared. And also, it also does another thing of demonizing a lot of different groups of people and sectors in our society. For example, it demonizes people who use drugs.
He tells me about the fear Duterte's war instilled in many people here.
Can you openly discuss drugs in the Philippines?
I would say that the discussion about drug use, especially illegal drug use, is very repressive and restrictive. And a lot of people who have views to the contrary about it are very scared to speak out. For example, there have been lots of pushes to have mandatory drug testing in several universities or in public universities or public schools. And of course, given the current climate of politics here, it's very dangerous and problematic for people to have mandatory drug testing or to have that conversation, to admit that they use drugs.
When the drug war started, one operation, Operation Tokang, was notable. It means something like the knocking operation. Police would ask local leaders for lists of people who could be connected to drugs. They would then go knock on their door and tell them to voluntarily surrender. Much of this was over a drug known here as shabu, more commonly known as methamphetamine or crystal meth everywhere else. Amphetamines are used to stay productive and focused everywhere in the world, whether taken as ADHD medication like Ritalin or Adderall, or bought on the street where it's often called speed. Crystal meth is a particularly potent member of this amphetamine family because you can also smoke or snort it, instead of eating it like a Ritalin pill. So why again does this self-medicating of people warrant drawn guns and kick down doors? If we have to believe the numbers, in 2008 the Philippines Dangerous Drugs Board reported that 2.1% of adults had used meth in the last year. When you compare this to countries like Indonesia or Japan, it's high. Compared to Australia or New Zealand, it's very similar. In 2016, the year Duterte got elected, it was reported that 1.1% of Filipinos had used the drug the last year. Not that these figures can be taken as hard facts, but if anything, they show a drop in use. A few years before Duterte got elected, a Filipino sociologist specialized in drug policy named Gideon Lasco spoke to a group of young, poor vendors of fruits and snacks in the harbor of Manila who liked using crystal meth. Their comments are interesting because they talk openly about it. Many use shabu so they could work harder, they said. Many in the community saw the use as harmless at worst and beneficial at best, they said. Because meth is so potent, it's particularly popular among those who want the cheapest drug for the longest effect. That's why it causes more harm than its other amphetamine cousins. It's cheap and strong. That's why the drug sometimes made it hard to distinguish between using in order to work and working in order to use. But many shared the same sentiment. They're not doing anything bad, so it's okay, one woman said. There are no addicts here. So what was, already in 2014, the greatest danger with shabu? According to the people interviewed by Lasco? It's illegality. The moral panic that Duterte created around drugs and shabu inked out to all types of substances that were illegal. People enjoying cannabis, psychedelics and MDMA usually weren't the main targets, but they could definitely be caught up in the killing spree. Luckily, through some friends, I was able to find someone who could talk about this from the perspective of a dealer, a drug pusher, as Duterte would call her. She doesn't sell shabu, it's not her scene, but she sells other things.
First, I sold weed, kush, and the Philippines has this weed called locals.
This girl was a friendly and welcoming middle-class girl who sells weed and LSD. I would have loved to show her as the regular person she is, but because drugs are illegal, I had to make her anonymous.
I sold LSD, I sold mushrooms, and some Valiums. It's hard if you don't have your source, but once you have your source can bring you to other sources. So you just have to have at least one source. They're usually students, or the early 20s. It was really tolerated, and the weed before was so cheap.
But when we speak of the scientific name, we call it cannabis sativa.
Fear seems to have dented a certain openness about drugs that existed in the Philippines before Duterte came to power.
When Duterte was not the president yet. During college, we walk around the streets smoking a joint. But now, psychedelics are almost popular here already. Most of the people who I talk to tried shrooms already. I think it's everyone's right to trip. At least they should try to trip once before they die, because it's life-changing. It's like everything improves. You become open-minded, right? More sensitive. Yeah. I can't explain it. It's the universe that you can't put in everything that the universe teaches you through words. Once the police gets an information about you, you can be brought to jail, or sometimes you can be gunned down. It's unfair. There's no justice.
Cannabis sativa is something that is illegal.
Philippines.
Illegal in the Philippines and many other parts of the world. I don't know why. I just don't know why.
Sana Amsterdam na lang to.
Yes.
Why do we humans not have the right to do whatever we want with our own bodies? Who decided this?
I don't know when this started, but here in our place, when we smoke this plant, we don't turn violent or harmful.
Good vibes.
To understand the Filipino drug war better and why President Duterte started a drug war in the first place, let's first understand the Philippines itself better and the historical context in which this war took place. The Philippines is the name of a country that is the product of waves of immigration. There's evidence that there have been humans on the islands for almost like 1 million years. They keep finding older humans. Over the millennia, people kept migrating to this volcanic archipelago. From vessels with the earliest humans to ancient cultures that read and wrote. Nowadays, these islands are home to many different cultures with varying levels of independence, bound together by the idea of the nation of the Philippines, an invention from the West. The people who live on these islands, together with all other living things that reside here, are bound together by a resilience against the region's natural forces. Active volcanoes, strong earthquakes, unsuspected tsunamis and an outsized amount of typhoons have hit the islands. The hardships have made the inhabitants each other's kababayan, fellow Filipino. In the last millennium, the islands started receiving Muslim conquerors and Catholic and Protestant colonizers, who started leaving their religious and ethnic marks on different islands. Like its name, the Philippines, which stems from the Spanish colonial age, when invaders claimed the islands for the Spanish crown and named them after future European Emperor King Philip II. The Spanish put the islands under a colonial spell for 3 centuries, until suddenly the United States barged in to bring some freedom and massacre Filipinos, because it had gotten into a war with Spain over Cuba. And the result was that the Philippines became occupied by the United States for about 50 years. It was during these years that the Americans came up with the idea of a drug war. Because of this man, Charles Brent, whose ideology around drugs would inspire the wars against them for the century to come. Brent was a Canadian-American bishop, a Christian man full of good intentions, sent to Manila to run the most important American church in the American colony. Being the bishop, he became the moral center of a relatively small tropical American expat community and became highly influential. Brent became well befriended with governors, presidents, and other people in high places. But as he wanted to be a good Christian, he chose to set up his ministry close to the poorest neighborhoods of Manila, like Binondo, the oldest known Chinatown in the world. There, Brent got acquainted with so-called opium dens, basically chill-out rooms visited by Chinese harbor workers who wanted to relieve pain. Here, customers would come chill, lie down and smoke opium to alleviate any pains that were ailing them. And who knows what was ailing them working in the harbor. But in the eyes of Brent, these people were unproductive, bleary-eyed addicts. He saw the opium use of the local Chinese and he lamented it. He called it the greatest evil in Filipino society. He convinced then President and personal friend Theodore Roosevelt and later William Taft of the need for the United States to wage an international moral battle for the soul of next generations. The very use of the product opium itself would be legally outlawed internationally, and according to Brent, the United States needed to lead this fight. Brent convinced a select group of countries that opium should only be available for medical and scientific use, and was the first to suggest so. To this day, Brent's legacy is visible. The Netherlands still calls its drug laws the opium laws, and the international institution you saw in Vienna at the beginning of this video was built on top of the work Brent started. The drug war Duterte is thus fighting started with an American colonist in his own country. It began with opium, morphine, heroin, then cocaine, cannabis, LSD, MDMA, and today the list contains hundreds of substances. Alcohol, tobacco, and coffee are not on the list of dangerous substances, but coca leaf, cannabis, peyote cacti are. What a coincidence, drugs traditionally popular in the West are not on these lists. The original idea behind the global drug war was born out of a compassion with the people living in the Philippines, a willingness to do good, to help people. But it turns out that such a strict ban on many substances has been equal to the nuclear option. Not allowing it at all makes use of many drugs unsafer and more violent than necessary. In one of the lower income areas of Tondo, I was led to someone who was being extorted for money by the police. A pretty commonly heard story throughout Southeast Asia actually. Her story showed me that the drug laws first thought up only a stone throw away from here have 1 century later become easy tools for corruption. This lady lives with her husband and 2 sons in a room of less than 4 by 4 meters, sleeping on cardboard because they can't afford a bed after their whole neighborhood burned down a few years ago. She told me how the police are keeping her in a bind.
Nakamotor siya si Kenneth, di ba? When he's sa motor, then checkpoint, Tapos nung na-checkpoint sila, hinuli na agad sila. Tapos doon pa lang hinubara na sila. Then the closest down, she said. The police said. Then, siyempre si Kenneth, binaba niya lahat ng damit at wala naman drugs. No more drugs. When I go to the detachment, he have drugs. The police tell me, I put the drug inside the t-shirt of your son. Yeah, I have no money to finance that because
for the bill
is 35,000. I have no money to avail that.
Is it only a money thing then? Is this all about money?
Maybe money or maybe political because di ba yung mayor natin bago? Gusto nila magpabango para sabihin na nakahuli sila kahit sino hinuhuli nila. Para lang may endorse sila sa mayor na ganito may nahuli sila, di ba?
You would think that drug laws exist, maybe, to prevent people from harm of these drugs, right? That maybe that's the original idea behind drug laws. But this does nothing to help your son.
It seems you are also powerless. You have no power to do anything about this.
Wala ka siguro mapangyarihan.
Oo, siyempre. I have no power. Kasi I'm a simple Filipino. Ganun lang yun pag mahirap ka. Kailangan, kahit mo naman siguro sabihin, may pulis ka, kailangan kasi pag drugs, hindi naman ganun kadali ngayon, mahirap.
The drug war started as an attempt to improve the lives of people. Instead, it has become a tool for the random extortion of people. The drug war in the Philippines did not happen in a vacuum. The country has long had difficult power struggles. After the colonization of the Spanish came the American occupation, then shortly the Japanese, then the Americans again, until in 1946 the Philippines finally became independent. It became a constitutional republic, with English as one of its official languages, with a polity that is very similar to that of the United States federal government, but has differences, like that every president has only one term of 6 years. But the new democracy couldn't prevent a dictator. Voters elected President Ferdinand Marcos in 1965, who created a handful of financial crises, enriched himself and his family, and used the social unrest over his misgoverning as an excuse to impose martial law on the Philippines.
I have received hundreds and hundreds of telegrams from all corners of the Philippines congratulating you, and incidentally me, for the proclamation of martial law, for the sudden cessation of anarchy and of criminality throughout the land.
Duterte is very different from Marcos, but they share the same simple belief in their power to stop crime with the wave of their hand. Ferdinand Marcos and his wife Imelda were well educated, vain, and got loaded by plundering government funds. A great documentary from director Lauren Greenfield shows the continuing influence of the Marcoses and shows a scene in which the grandson of dictator Marcos explains the priorities in the Marcoses household.
He was a little bit of a nerd as a kid, so he was, he wanted to do physics, maths, biology, but my grandfather was like, there's no money in that, so switched to politics.
A great story from that time is when the Beatles had to flee off the island. After they made it through customs with all the wheat they were carrying, paranoid as hell, they insulted Imelda Marcos by not visiting the banquet she had thrown for them. The Beatles were basically chased to their airplane and were glad they got out alive.
There was about 5 sort of real big, sort of funny-looking fellas with guns and all the rest of the gear. Who did all the kicking. Yeah, and give us the worst time possible, before.
Luckily, their weed was never found. The Beatles would have probably had to spend some time in a Filipino jail cell. But we're digressing.
It is necessary to reform
the alpha male was eventually kicked from its rock because of his ailing health through a political revolution in 1985 called the People Power or ETSA Revolution. A new liberal democracy with an updated constitution was installed. In the 25 years after Marcos, the country had relatively stable governments. On average, it had an economic growth of about 5% a year. Poverty and wealth inequality dropped. but it went through multiple unnecessary ecological disasters, like an over-reliance on cars in its cities, a vast plastic pollution, and still about 10 to 15% lives below the poverty line.
25 years on, and people power has taken on a bittersweet flavor for many Filipinos who feel not much has changed since they first reclaimed democracy.
Wealth inequality has caused a culture of scarcity. Despite poverty slowly dropping, wealth and power inequality remains vast, tells Richard Haydarian, a political scientist and historian.
You go to a certain barangay, which is like a neighborhood, and you see, look at the names of the chairman, the vice chairman, the other officials. They're almost all family members or relatives or related to each other. 40 families, 0.0001% of the population was taking home 76% of newly created growth. Emergence of someone like Duterte was almost inevitable, precisely because of the inability of the predecessors of Duterte to break that deadlock in the system and to breach the gap between the rhetoric of democracy and prosperity and the reality of deprivation and political dynasties dominating almost all offices.
After corruption scandals or good but bland leadership and the lack of a decent Filipino story about the actual ills plaguing the country, there was room for someone to exploit these feelings of discontent.
When I say I will do it for my country, I will do it even if I have to kill you or be killed in the process.
Rodrigo, or Roa Duterte, was born on March 28 in 1945, which means he shares a birthday with some excellent people. He grew up on the island of Mindanao, where his father was the governor of the province of Davao. Duterte grew up as one of the richest kids of the island, training to become a lawyer. According to his brother Emmanuel, he got beaten up by his mom so often that she wore out her horsewhip. At parochial school, Rodrigo Duterte says he was caned by Jesuit priests and molested by one. There was violence in the house, there was violence in the school, and violence in the neighborhood, his brother Emmanuel said. That is why he is always angry. Because if you have pain when you're young, you're angry all the time. He developed a career as a lawyer and quickly rose as the chief prosecutor of Davao, trying to prove people were criminals and locking them away. Then the EDSA revolution happened, and the new president, Cory Aquino, installed Duterte as acting mayor of the city of Davao. 2 years later, elections were held and Duterte got elected. As mayor, Duterte projected himself as a harsh crime fighter. He spread successful propaganda claiming Davao had gotten really safe. To this day, this myth endures. Part of this is fueled by an online pro-Duterte army. User-generated websites like Numbeo claim that Davao is safe, which is then eagerly copied by cheap news websites to repeat the myth that Davao was peaceful.
Ito yung naisip nga, binuhay ko ng Panginoon para magsabi ng totoo that Davao is not really peaceful. Davao is a reign of terror.
This is journalist Jun Pala, a controversial local nuisance who was a well-known local radio host. And he was picking fights with the powerful, so he got killed.
I do not demean his memory, but that he was a rotten son of a bitch.
Is that an excuse to kill him just because a journalist is corrupt or whatever? Is that an
Well,
excuse?
that is the reason. You are asking why? That is the reason. Of course, I know who killed him. Kasi binastos niya yung tao.
In 1998, he got a divorce from his then wife, and a psychological assessment in the divorce papers concluded that Duterte had a narcissistic personality disorder, a pervasive tendency to demean, humiliate others, and violate their rights. Duterte can also come across as both a smart lawyer, as well as an incredibly likable, simple guy with, a foul mouth and some violent tendencies. The people who love him describe him as a fighter for good causes, warm and caring. People like his granddaughter.
How is he as a dad?
Loving, caring, fun.
So, total opposite. Okay. Hindi ka naman natatakot when you see him on TV. Bakit?
Wala, kasi pareho lang naman kami ng ugali.
The hundreds of deaths that happened per year in the city of 2 million caught the eye of US diplomats and the United Nations Human Rights Council at the time. When in the early 2010s Duterte was starting to get named for a possible presidency, whistleblowers started coming forward about the death squads in Davao. People like Edgar Mataubato, a former hitman for Duterte.
Ang nasamahan ko diyan yung sa pagkapatay, paglilibing
Siguro mga 300 plus katao yung nalibing ko.
Matobato testified in the Filipino Senate that he has found Jesus and that his conscience and memories are haunting him. Like that time Duterte emptied an Uzi on a suspect at a golf course.
Nandoon si Mayor naghihintay. Pagkatapos, inimbestiga niya, ikaw pala ha? Tapos hinampas niya ng golf course. Naubos yung ngipin. Naubos yung ngipin. Pagkatapos, dinala na sa MAA. Doon na pinatay, ma'am.
Another whistleblower was Arturo Las Cañas, who says he served as a team leader of the death squad as a police officer. He too wanted to come clean with his past, in his case because he faced death after kidney surgery.
Mostly we planted 38 pistols, revolvers, and well, couple of some drugs to make it appear that the search or the arrest legal and there was resistance.
Las Cañas said in total he killed more than 200 people and was complicit in the death of his own brothers.
I was indirectly responsible for the killing of my two brothers because of blind loyalty, blind belief of his campaign.
Las Cañas now lives in exile in Singapore. Duterte was always able to continue with his death squad and tough guy talk in public, gaining more popularity and notoriety along the way, without ever being held accountable.
Extrajudicial killing? Of course not. Never happened. But killings, yes.
Okay.
If I become president, it would be bloody.
A year before the election, Mark Zuckerberg announced that anyone with a smartphone would get free internet in the Philippines. Well, actually, free Facebook. 97% of those Filipinos who are online today have a Facebook account. And Duterte went viral on its algorithms. And his notorious online army of influencers and trolls was jokingly called the Duterte diehard supporters, DDS, like the Davao Death Squad. They painted Las Cañas and Matobato as fools, and Duterte was hailed as a savior who would bring order and prosperity to the country. An online campaign swept the Filipino internet, urging Duterte to run. In Tagalog, that translates to takbo. And sometimes Duterte's name was hidden in the title of some really catchy pop tunes.
Do not ask me to run. I've been telling people, because I will not sit there as president and just like any other regime, sabihin ko yan lang ang kaya ko. You spare me. I don't need it. I said, I have enough accolades in my lifetime to make me happy. Why should I look for trouble? Pero pag nilagay din niya ang do not fuck with me because I will. Talagang gagawin ko.
This is an interview with Maria Ressa, the co-founder of the impressive journalistic platform Rappler. In the interview, Mayor Duterte is far from shy about his authoritarian ambitions.
It's gonna be a dictatorship. It's the police and the military who will be the backbone. If they agree with you, if the right-thinking policemen and military men agree with you, then after 6 years, there will be a new setup, maybe a federal type, less corruption, and a fresh air for the next generation.
This interview is ominous. What both of them don't know during this interview is that Duterte will have Maria Ressa put in jail before his term is over. And that Maria Ressa will partly win a Nobel Peace Prize because of it. Maria Ressa asks him about his moral boundaries.
So no qualms about killing killers?
Yes, of course. I must admit that I have killed. 3 months early on, I killed about 3 people.
Again, though, the peace with the rebels. This was also something that you did. I mean, what was...
Ressa glances over Duterte's strange admittance here. Maybe it was too bizarre for a presidential candidate to say something so wild? But saying outlandish, violent things was part of his shoot-from-the-hip Duterte Harry brand.
But in Davao, I used to do it personally, just to show to the guys that if I can do it, why can't you?
When the 2016 election came around, other candidates had weird infighting in their party or just felt fake. Only one really stood out as straight and decisive.
I will get rid of drugs, suppress crime, stop corruption in government in a matter of 3 to 6 months.
A lot of people love modernization, but a lot of people do not make it. They believe they should have a voice in the system, but they're not properly equipped for that, or they were not fortunate to have the voice. So eventually, a lot of them find certainty in figures who promise essentially heaven on earth, or celebrate violence as a catharsis out of the deadlock of the hypocrisy of the system.
In the end, a majority of Filipino voters did not vote for Duterte, but 39% did. And under Filipino law, that was enough for a self-confessed murderer who ran on a drug war to become the Philippines' new head of state.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte.
What was so powerful about being anti-drugs that it could make you president? And does a violent drug war like this actually work? These were questions I wanted to explore further, although I knew questions usually lead to new questions. But the idea is to ask better questions, for answers are fickle things. What did the journalist think was the reason that Duterte got elected?
It's like a projection thing. You know, if a person wanted to project himself, so he has to create an illusion that this is happening. And then from there, I am the one who can control that.
I'm the only one who can stop it.
Yeah.
Duterte was able to successfully exploit fears for an enemy many have heard incomplete information about for decades: illegal drugs.
If we do not interdict this problem, the next generation will be having a serious problem.
So was Duterte really convinced of any of this? Or did he know this would work? I've posed this issue to Carlos Conde, a journalist and now researcher at Human Rights Watch, who helped me make sense of some things in Filipino society I had questions about.
The thing is that they managed to shift to shape the narrative around the drug problem and make an issue out of that, make a problem out of that, and presenting Duterte as a solution. And of course, they learned this tactic from his days in Davao City when he was mayor. This is where they experimented this type of populist politics, and they saw that it worked there and it should work in the whole of the Philippines, and that's exactly what happened. They found an issue that they could, an enemy, that the bad guy, the demon that they could exploit and to prop up Duterte. If you compare the drug problem to other countries, the Philippines is not particularly
very average compared to anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Philippines didn't have any drug problem that was outside the ordinary, but it made for great politics. The Philippines does, however, have a poverty problem. In the years before Duterte got elected, extreme poverty had been dropping quickly. Then, when Duterte became president, poverty reduction stalled, even before COVID started in 2020. Different metrics measuring poverty all show this same trend. A friend wanted to show me one of the more disturbing things I originally did not set out for. In one of the inner city neighborhoods near Tondo, I was brought to the so-called rugby boys. Basically a term for any kid that is sniffing glue in certain parts of Metro Manila.
Oh yeah, it's like glue. Yeah. It's glue. Yeah.
I'm glad they could teach me a lesson about the general over-focus on drugs in society, when the actual underlying problem is staring you right in the face.
It feels like high. He feels like this high. It's floating.
Like it's floating?
Yeah.
So...
Floating your hair. Your medicine.
What's your name?
Thais. Thais, yes.
Lagi kayo rito mag-anak. Oh, may bahay ba kayo? They don't know how.
Meron eh. Wala.
Wala siyang, there's no.
Bye.
No home. So what did they do all day?
Hey.
Ano ginagawa niyo buong araw lang?
Tambay.
These kids are sniffing glue of the RUGBY brand, manufactured by Bostik in the Philippines. The active compound toluene is what gives these kids a high, and the glue, its distinctive smell.
Where is that solvent?
Can I see it? Can I smell it? It's a solvent.
What is it?
How to
Parang malalasing lang.
Can I smell it?
Can I smell it?
Parang malalasing lang daw.
Oh yeah, it's like glue. Yeah. It's glue. Yeah.
The police usually leave these kids alone, but as an example, they make things clear. Should Duterte's main responsibility be their glue, or make sure they have something to eat?
Oh, how did you get food?
Paano daw kayo nagkakaroon ng pagkain dito?
Ha?
Mama Limos.
What happened to the parents?
This is money from
Yeah.
He said that her mother is sick, and his father is died.
Would taking away these kids' glue solve their problems? Or punishing them sweeten their lives? Nah. What these kids need is free food, shelter, and care. Does this war work to end all drug use? No. Some people, also kids, will find ways to intoxicate themselves, for whatever reason. Would this war work to help the people who use drugs? Or does it make their life harder?
Jason?
I did decide to let the kids switch to sugar for the time being.
Yeah, they can buy whatever they want. Yeah.
What's good for children should also be good for adults. So if kids would be better helped with care and wealth, why wouldn't adults? Couldn't there be better ways to mitigate risks surrounding pills and powders that prevent people from dying from drugs in the first place? Because drug use is a conscious, often social decision that depends on price, availability, and expected positive effects. Not determined by a lack of morals, but by having different morals. That was the mistake that Charles Brent made after seeing the opium dens in Manila. He forced his own morals about opium, cocaine, and morphine on others, and turned them into the global standard. But a few years after his proposal, America famously went even further than the list of banned substances made by Brent. The United States also made alcohol illegal. During most of the 1920s, alcohol was prohibited in the United States. There's an open debate about how alcohol prohibition influenced use. It seems that for a short time, alcohol use went down, and then shut up again as soon as the black market had taken over. Also, people stopped drinking high-quality beer and wine. They switched to low-quality hard liquor, the most alcohol for the lowest price. The amount of inmates and homicides shut up, and the police saw they were losing an endless battle. After about a decade, the amendment was overturned, and the forces that were built up to go after alcohol were now going after other drugs. Alcohol is one of the unhealthiest drugs there is, especially in high amounts. Yet we found a way to incorporate it in many cultures. Forbid it, and people will find another way to medicate, influence, stimulate, inspire, or numb themselves. So we know prohibition has failed in the past, spawned an illegal market and created a whole new field of crime. But for drugs, we've done it all over again. And because we've been raised with seeing drugs as evil, it has made many of us numb to the violence that unnecessarily surrounds these molecules. But the truth is, too much has been made of drug use.
We do sometimes need to have a strong hand also. Because drugs is the evil of all the evils.
One of the greatest documentaries about Duterte's drug war is one by director James Jones and cinematographer Olivier Sarbil, who shot a fly-on-the-wall documentary showing the drug war from multiple perspectives on the front line.
Pag sidigaw nga ating pasabihin niya, pag user kahit puser ka rin. Pero alam mo, Jim, alam mo, siguro yung paggamit mong yan dapat ngayon, gising ka na.
May karapatan kayong manahimik.
The documentary shows how brutal and dehumanizing the drug war can be.
May ginawa ka, may dala-dala ka, may possession ka ng pinagbabawal na gamot, yun. Pwede kang i-rehab ng 6 months. Kung aaminin mo, plead guilty ka na. Inamin mo inako mo. May kasalanan ka 6 months. Ngayon, kung hindi mo akuin at ipaglalaban mo tong case na to at natalo ka, pwede kang makulong ng 20 years. Di ba? Aminin mo. Di ba? Kawawa na ba yung mga anak mo?
And it turns out the ones terrorizing people are not the drug users, but the representatives of the law.
Sabi kasi nila, basta daw tayo pumapatay, ano? Sunod, wag kang maganyan ha, respetuhin mo ha. Pag hindi ka magpakabait, babarilin kita ha.
Tarantado pa rin sila. Gusto pa rin nila kaming patayin.
During Duterte's drug war, it was very often unclear who was being killed by whom. Were it vigilantes, or was it the police? This question was raised after one of the most lasting images of the drug war was made on July 24th, 2016. Michael Cioran was murdered by unknown assailants on a motorcycle. Many photographers were there to capture his wife, cradling his dead body. The killers of Michael Cioran wanted to act as if Michael was a drug dealer. According to Michael's wife, he was just a pedicab driver who had voted for Duterte in the most recent elections. The killers had tried to legitimize the murder of Michael through a sign next to him. "I'm a pusher. Do not imitate me." The picture of photographer Refi Lerma became the most iconic image of Duterte's drug war. This first wave of murders by vigilantes and officers led to political pushback.
Have you ever seen a body count like this in such a short period of time?
No, this is the first time. It's phenomenal. It's unprecedented. And that's why it deserves inquiry.
This is Senator Laila de Lima, who led a series of Senate hearings on the drug war. When she brought former hitman Mato Bato to the stand for the nation to hear his stories, she rattled a lot of feathers in Duterte's government. The killings were even subdued for a while, ending the first wave of killings in the drug war. De Lima was afraid Duterte was undermining institutions in the Philippines, and she quickly became Duterte's fiercest critic. Here she's going after his right hand, Police Chief Bato de la Rosa.
Please do not argue with me. I'm the one asking you a question here. Yes, Your Honor. Do not argue with me.
Duterte repaid her by creating a new myth, claiming she was somehow protecting big drug lords. They even drummed up a few witnesses, reading their imagined testimony from paper. It was a tactic that worked very well.
Hindi naman talaga gusto nyo. Ikaw lang yun ako ngayon. Come here! Do what you want to me, Mr. President.
She was put under house arrest, and she has been there since.
Remember, President Duterte was never used to or never encountered such an opposition during his 25-year authoritarian rule in Davao City. So this experience of having the Senate opposing him, investigating him, is something that's definitely hurting his ego.
So did the drug war help Duterte to more easily go after his political opponents? The killings resumed, and Duterte tried his best again to dehumanize drug users.
I'd be happy to slaughter them.
But sometimes national cases again caused them trouble. When a victim received a human face through mass media, like the case of Kian de los Santos. Kian de los Santos was a 17-year-old kid who was wrongly accused of having supplied drugs to a neighbor. Police showed up to his neighborhood when an informant gave them false information. He told them, "That's Kian, who I get my drugs from," he had told him. The police later declared that Kian had started shooting at them and that they had to act in self-defense. Kian was about to become just another statistic as a violent drug pusher that no one had to care about. But CCTV from the area clearly showed that the cops were lying. Before any shooting had started, the cops had already taken him into custody. Kian was heard yelling, please stop, I have a test tomorrow," while being dragged away. The cops planted meth on him and then murdered him. His killing sparked mass outcry in the country, because the video didn't lie. Video can tell a truth for all those to see, like words cannot. The alleged drug pusher was clearly the victim here. The killing of Kian de los Santos halted the drug war for a second time. The video of Kian's killing shocked the nation in a week where also other teenagers had died at the hands of the police.
I saw the tape or tapes doon sa TV, and I agreed that there should be an investigation.
Imagine the political web Kian's parents found themselves in after the death of their son, when they were invited to the palace. Duterte blamed his murder on corrupt policemen, a few rotten apples, and was not held responsible. He could always delegate responsibility for anything that went wrong with the drug war to the head of the PNP, the Philippines National Police, Bato de la Rosa. Bato de la Rosa was Duterte's right hand as head of police in Davao City, and then became responsible for executing the national drug war after Duterte became president. Bato de la Rosa was very good at taking guilt upon himself.
Minsan, Your Honor, pinapasadyos ko na yung sitwasyon namin sa PNP. Gusto ko sana ma-revoke yung PNP. Kasi mahal ko yung organisasyon namin. Pero ako'y hirap na, but I will never surrender.
Oh, okay. Why is everybody waging the drug war always so stubborn about things? So, did the drug war cause innocent victims? Yes. And did this cause headaches for the Duterte government? Not really. The drug war has seemed to have made Rodrigo Duterte very popular. When the midterm election came in 2019, his party, the PDP, won in parliament. The result was broadly seen as a legitimization for his drug war. The YouTube channel Asian Boss did a good temperature reading of feelings of some young people in Manila at the time.
May nagbago na ba sa Pilipinas mula nung nilaunch ni President Duterte yung war on drugs?
Yes, there's a big change. Hindi na ganun katalamak, hindi na yung parang dito na lang sa may gilid na madilim, nagkaganon. Watchful na sila. So, in the streets of the Philippines, I can say na secure naman.
Sa tingin ko po, oo. Kasi po, sa lugar po namin dati, it's sa Maynila, sa RUGBY, marami po talagang mga drug addicts doon at sobrang talamak po talagang pagnanakawan ng mga riot. Kaya mula po nung nagkaroon ng war on drugs, nabawasan po yung rate ng riots and pagnanakawan.
Sa tingin ko, mas naging delikado sa situation ngayon kasi may iba talaga na ginagamit yung advocate ng president natin para lang mapatumbay yung mga kalaban nila or mga kagalit nilang tao. Kaya nila ginagawa yun.
For me po, mas naging safe. Mas nagkaroon po ako ng kumpiyansa na lumabas na mag-isa lang ganun. Kasi wala na po akong masyadong nakita na parang takot yung
Facts are just not so clear-cut in the Philippines. There is a lot of smoke and mirrors. I was trying to figure out if Duterte was indeed as popular as headlines promised. But quickly found out they all trace back to research done by a group called SWS, which does face-to-face interviews. So basically a random someone asking you in person, "Hey, that president known for killing and imprisoning his opponents, do you approve of this guy or not?" Well, but the conclusion, whether people really truly supported him in their hearts or not, was Duterte successful in establishing an image of himself as a strong and decisive leader? Yes. To many, it probably looked like Duterte was doing something helpful. Scandals never really touched him as president. Except maybe for the episode that De La Rosa had been crying about. This time, an absurdly embarrassing moment where the police officers from the anti-drug unit had kidnapped a Korean businessman, Jae-ik-jo. There had now been dozens of cases of corrupt, meth-planting, murdering police officers, but this one caused international furor. Jae-ik-jo was a businessman who had been blackmailed, abducted, murdered, and his body left inside the Philippines National Police Headquarters compound. Incidentally, in front of the building of the anti-drug unit. Apparently, the cops who committed this kidnap for ransom thought that that was a safe space to put Joe's body.
This case gave us great shock in Korea. We couldn't believe that he was kidnapped by a group of policemen and he was strangled to death inside Philippine National Police Headquarters at Camp Crame.
Duterte had to go and apologize officially for these police excesses.
But please, understand your honor na kami po ay tao lang. Yung mga pulis na yan, nasisilaw sa pera dahil din yan sa kahirapan, nasisilaw sa pera. Pero hindi ko sinasabi na gawin natin yung excuse. Dahil ako ay anak rin na mahirap.
As the son of poor people, he could know that the poor are much easier targets for the police than the rich.
Minsan may time na I don't know who to trust, kung sino na yung kung sino talagang in or out sa drug business.
A drug war puts an enormous strain on the police force. The drugs keep coming in and they make cops easily corruptible.
Bumili ang isang police asset na mahigit 5 gramo ng shabu mula kay Ocampo sa halagang 9,000 piso. Pilit pa rin tinatanggi ng opisyal na kanya ang droga.
Planted, sagrado lang. Dahil wala akong dalang ganyan.
And sending out police officers to go and kill people will then inevitably also lead to officers themselves getting killed.
Ngayon sabihin, may human rights ngayon para sa opisyal. May police na matay opisyal. Asan na human rights ngayon?
This violence, in the long run, leads to internal rot in police departments.
One of the reasons why many of our crimes are not solved is because people refuse to come talk to us because they don't trust us.
So does the drug war work to the benefit of police officers? No. Not for the majority of well-meaning cops. In the long term, it leads to a mistrust towards police officers in general, and by proxy, the government they represent. The prisons of the Philippines are famously packed, some working at 600% overcapacity. In 2018, 70% of inmates were held on drug-related cases. In the same spirit, Duterte had announced that he would erect mega camps for addicts who volunteered to rehabilitate. This plan, straight out of some dystopian drug war nightmare, only came to fruition because a Chinese businessman paid for it. The Mega Drug Abuse Treatment and Rehabilitation Center was erected in North Luzon. The plan quickly failed because it was hardly thought through. It would involve moving and feeding thousands of people to north of Manila. The logistics and cost of these massive camps were just too crazy, so the government started focusing more on community rehab centers. Through a network of organizations, I got in touch with the pilot project for one of these centers that was trying an alternative, non-violent approach to the perceived drug problem. Caloocan government worker Bok Labastilla helped to set up the alternative program and took me to it, designed to protect local people from jail and random killings.
So can you say that in a way Duterte also just helped the discussion about drugs in a way, in order to get something positive going?
In the sense that he's sort of really single-minded about it. He's also been saying that that's the thing we have to solve in order for us to move on. So that sort of mobilized a lot of the resources available.
So it mobilized resources both for killing people and for helping people.
Yeah. You can say that. Oh, okay.
We're next to a church, you shouldn't curse. So where are we going now?
This one is Our Lady of Grace. It was the bishop who really set this up for us. Each one goes through an intake process, and psychiatrist gets to say like if you're there from
Not more than 4.
Yeah.
And do you have to be clean?
No, the drug testing is not really a big part of the program. So it's really a waste of time. We get more out of just talking to them. Right? And
so I got to see what this alternative approach entailed. Okay, so what they're doing, as I understood it, is that they're trying to avoid their shoes and flip-flops laying around because they symbolize the drugs that they should not try to get in touch with ever again in their lives.
After the knocking on the door, the drug user is being listed to what watch list.
The watch list.
Yes, drug watch
get into
list.
a dark watch list.
Drug watch
A
list.
drug watch list.
Yes.
So if you had anything to do with drugs, you will get on this list.
Yeah. You will get listed.
Listed. Yeah. So it's, to me, that's very, it's like, holy Jesus. Like, that I would be on a list somewhere because it's for marijuana also, right?
Yeah.
For mushrooms, LSD, like everything. Did you surrender yourself, or was this also a plea bargain? Voluntary surrendering. Yeah?
So some people were offered a plea bargain because they had been arrested. Others went voluntarily into this program because they feared for their safety.
That you do it. Yeah.
lahat kayo may pamilya? Walang dalaga?
Ako nang tumigil, nag-pray ako ng araw na gusto ko nang tumigil nun. Huwag akong mapapahamak.
So you're using shabu, right? Shabu?
Marijuana.
Marijuana.
You were using marijuana?
How many years ka naging marijuana?
I think 8
8 years.
What was bad about it?
Yeah.
Why was it bad?
Bakit masama yung marijuana? Bakit masama ang marijuana?
Siguro dahil walang tax. Pero tingin ko sa hindi naman.
No, bakit tingin mo masama yung marijuana?
Yun nga sir, nung huli, pag
Yeah, because he gets arrested every time.
Ang legal ulit yung alak.
Yeah, unlike alcohol, it's legal.
We have 4 levels of addiction. Level 1, which is the experimenter, used just once or twice in their entire life drugs. This level 2 is a moderate drug user or the occasional user. They just use it for some occasions like birthdays, gatherings. People here in Filipino use it what you call katuwaan, or it's fun. For fun.
For fun, yeah.
Yeah, it's for fun.
Recreational. Level 3?
The level 3 is the regular user.
Regular user, yeah.
The level 1 is the drug dependent. They cannot live their life without drugs.
Yes, yeah,
Drug
okay.
dependence.
Yeah. So I think I scored myself somewhere between level 2 and 3.
Okay.
Yes, but as a very normal functioning human
That's the
being.
difference here in the Philippines. Here in the Philippines, there's no legal drugs aside from smoking and
Alcohol.
Yes.
Does anybody know anybody who got killed also?
Yeah. Meron na ba? Ha? Wala? May sabi? May namatay na ba sa... May kilala ba kayong namatay?
Sir.
Yeah.
Everyone.
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 Kaibigan ko.
Everyone.
Binaril doon.
Ito pala yung
Just behind the market.
Behind the market.
Yeah, we're past.
Because of drugs?
Yes.
I know. Who did it?
Got hacked. Police.
The police.
Coming from the Netherlands, having grown up about a 15-minute bike ride from a cannabis store for most of my life, this was a very disorienting afternoon for me.
Because you have a legalized marijuana shirt.
On the one hand, I feel sorry for them being put in this position. But at the same time, it's never bad to make new friends, look within, and work on yourself.
What is this?
What is certificate, recognition certificate for how to introduce myself, to how to study myself. To see, I work hard at this.
Yeah? You learned how to do that in jail?
Yes.
Really? Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And so how do you like this program?
Kasi natututo ko kung paano ka magsisimula ulit magbagong buhay. To how you to move on in your life.
To move on in your life. Yeah. And is that happening? Are you moving on?
Happy.
Yeah?
I'm also happy that isa masaya ako kasi kasama ko sila.
Quiet on the Western Front?
Yeah.
We waited for most of the night, but it seemed like there would be no killing we could go and visit.
What time is it? Oh, 1.
What, earlier, later?
I have an appointment tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Oh, for the past three weeks, ano? Always in the morning.
Always in the morning, early morning,
3 weeks,
weekends.
Weekend.
This night resulted in an interesting interview, but as it was the last night I had available, it meant I would be going home without self-made pictures of the actual killings I was making a documentary about. In retrospect, it turned out I visited at the end of a third wave of killings in the drug war. And during that night, there was suddenly a wave of killings in the city of Cebu, not in Caloocan, where I was. As the war progressed, new numbers came out about the amount of deaths, like these from the research desk of ABS-CBN, a news network that got their license revoked under Duterte because they reported too many facts. The drug war that Duterte fought was at its bloodiest in the beginning, then slowly tapered off when it had lost its shine. And then, when COVID hit, the country shut down in multiple ways. There were other priorities. In total, the amount of deaths caused by Duterte's drug war, direct or indirect, is now estimated between 10,000 and 30,000 people. The question is if anyone will ever be held accountable.
The ones who are in the field right now, maybe there's less than a handful of us who are still going out in the field. But it's a collective work of artists, of NGO workers who are still really active in pursuing trying to help these people find justice.
So what keeps you going?
I don't know. Maybe it's because we're crazy. Because maybe we're crazy.
No. Our government is crazy.
Yeah. No, they're idiots.
In the meantime, De La Rosa had his own plans in life.
Sinabi ko kay Presidente, Sir, hindi kita iwan sa laban nito. I will be with you through thick and thin, no matter what.
De La Rosa figured he would have an easier job elsewhere, so he left Duterte in his fight, then ran for the Senate, and won.
Ronald Bato de la Rosa firmly secures a seat in the Senate. The former Philippine National Police Chief and Bureau of Corrections Chief admits that he doesn't know what his new position entails, but he does say that he will actively seek out seminars on lawmaking, and he will also ask for advice from other senators.
And then started to run for president himself on a very original platform.
Legacy ng ating Pangulong Duterte, ng ating laban sa droga, kriminalidad, korupsyon at terorismo.
So, did the drug war work to advance the careers of Duterte's allies? Sure, yes it did. The campaign for the elections of 2022 were in full swing during the release of this film. This is a caravan of Sarah Duterte, the daughter of the president, who followed him up as the mayor of Davao. She is running as a vice presidential candidate, the running mate of Ferdinand Marcos Jr., Bongbong Marcos, the son of her previous dictator. Them being running mates is a great marriage of two families who have been able to enchant so many Filipinos in the myths about themselves. The question is how big the impunity for a president of the Philippines can be. And there has been some pressure from abroad, mainly from an investigation by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Duterte has made his position very clear about having to possibly face an international tribunal.
Itong ICC, I will not, why would I defend or face an accusation before white people? Kalumang colonizers ito noon, they have not atoned for their sins against the countries that they invaded, including the Philippines. I will readily face a court being accused in a Philippine court before a Filipino judge.
Valid points about colonialism, but two wrongs don't make a right. Or do they? The constant pressure on Maria Ressa and Rappler would turn her into an icon, winning a Nobel Peace Prize. This again shone a light on the Philippines and probably now makes her the most famous Filipino after Duterte and boxer and senator Manny Pacquiao. She says there were two sides where to lay the blame for the impunity in our country.
Rodrigo Duterte's drug war and Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook.
She says social media algorithms normalize and amplify ideas that would otherwise be seen as extremists. A problem that goes beyond the reign of Duterte.
Highly profitable micro-targeting operations are engineered to structurally undermine human will. And now they pose a foundational threat to markets and elections.
So one other thing is also clear. After Ressa's shared Nobel Prize and the wide international attention for Duterte's drug war, did Duterte's drug war make the Philippines much more visible internationally? Oh yes it did. So, does it work, this drug war by Duterte? And the answer is, yes, of course it does. If you run an intimidation campaign on a society, it will surely have its effect. But to lower drug use? Probably temporarily, yes, like with alcohol in the 20s. And to lower crime in the Philippines? Considering the death toll, no. And define crime when the ones supposed to be fighting it can act with impunity. I realized the question, did the Filipino drug war work, was too simple. A much better question to ask is, could problems around drug use also be solved by not killing thousands of people? I think the answer is yes, and that's why it's worth trying. The tides around drugs are changing in the country that came up with the drug war. They realized in America that there are much better ways to deal with drugs. By having legal markets for the most manageable variants, by not having advertising for it, by setting up systems for people to learn how to curb their use, and to try to rein in their commercial exploitation. So, there seem to be different ways of dealing with drugs that do not involve killing people. Through his brashness, Duterte made clear how foolish the hardline holy war against drugs is. Violent and unnecessary. And no matter how likable of a character he seems to be personally, he fits in an unfortunate line of Filipino emperors who are not wearing any clothes. But in Duterte's case, this naked emperor not only happened to be carrying a gun, he also had a fucked up childhood.
If we deal with our own shit, it could solve a lot of problems in our society. I'll be very honest. I think President Duterte has a lot of shit he has to sort out. And then he ended up as our president. And we're suffering as a result of that. Sometimes all you need is that instead of going out in the world and fighting the world, go back within and try to rein in, right? The demons. Our leaders need that, we need that. Yeah. Because we're also going through a lot of stress because of what's happening here, yeah.
The Philippines has a lot to sort out. For example, who is going to be their next president? I don't really have an opinion on this. I think only somebody who is less violent and maybe more capable than Duterte would do. But this is something for the Filipinos, of course, to decide. I'm very happy right now because this is literally the moment that I just finished this documentary. I literally just came back from that edit set after 2.5 years. That's how long it took me. And I wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of insight in how this documentary was made and where to from now on. I walked into a police station in Manila to talk to police officers about this. But as I didn't have a journalist visa on me while I was traveling the Philippines, I was pretty much aware that it maybe wasn't the safest situation for me to be in. And so I left the camera off. The camera was not the primary reason for me going to the Philippines. I'm actually working on something else, a research project that hopefully in the future I can tell more about. And I talked to these police officers and they all said nobody joins the police force to kill people. And I keep on hearing this from police officers. Police officers generally want to help society. That's why they joined the force in the first place. It's just that when politicians send police to do the wrong things, then stuff gets murky. Stuff gets really murky. And I think that there are a lot of wise lessons in the Filipino drug war. For example, that it works. I think that was one of the biggest conclusions. If you lay down the law on a country, then that will have its effect. And the question is can you do it in different ways? Can you do it in ways that maybe are not so violent, that keep the peace and also solve problems at the same time? At the same time, it's I think also a valid lesson that violent regimes work, and it's something to be very aware of, that even in a democracy like the Philippines, people can rise with good intentions, because Duterte has good intentions, I think, but just horrible policies. I think most people actually, so don't get me wrong, I think most people have good intentions. I think the world is stringed together in good intentions, and as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's what's going on here, that if you at a certain point synthesize what actually went on, you can see that violence here is just a way to get power. And without any pushback, this violence can go on and on and on. In this case, it just so happened to be that drug users were the people singled out. Very often it's minorities, or it's the poor, or in general. Here there was a clear rhetoric around drug users, which is very unfortunate. But I do think, and I hope that this documentary showed, that what is wrong with the drug war? That in the end, it doesn't help people, it only hurts people. And I think the Philippines is a really good example of this. And I think that Duterte has shown this very well. This is a one-taker, as this is, again, literally the last thing I'm doing before I'm pasting this at the end of that, and then I'm exporting and uploading. It's the truth. So I have a bunch of notes to see if I'm not missing anything. I want to thank you just so much. Before I go to these notes, I want to thank you so much for making it all the way to here. Like, this is crazy. I could not have done this without the help of my Patreon supporters. There have been a couple of moments during the making of this documentary where I just kind of wanted to throw it all out and just not think about it anymore. And I always felt the responsibility towards my Patreon supporters to actually keep going. And here I am. My Patreon is still up. It is now my blog. So most of my content, most of my blog content will now go there, while I'm still on YouTube. And I'm also on Twitter and on Instagram, so make sure to follow me there. But here on YouTube, you might have noticed something if you have seen me before. and are like, don't I know this guy from somewhere? So I changed the name of this channel from Controlled Substance to Thijs Roos, and this has a lot of reasons that I will also explain more on Patreon, but it just made so much more sense. This doesn't necessarily always have to remain a drug channel. So right now I'm still doing drug war journalism. In the past, you can see on my channel, I did a lot of stuff about drugs and drug policy. But there are just so many more interests that I have in my life. There's so many more sides of me that I want to be able to showcase. I want to be able to interview people about a range of topics. I want to edit things that I did about more ecology, nature stuff. Space exploration. I've had a podcast for 3 years in Dutch, English and Dutch, about space exploration. It's a huge part of what I do. And I want to have this channel reflect that more. I thought it was very unfortunate that I felt boxed in a certain way in just having to always do the drug thing. I want to be able to do more. So drugs are not going anywhere. It's just that I gotta be able to do other things as well and upload much more as well. So if you want to support me, then like this video and subscribe, of course. But please do check out my Patreon. But also there's a bunch of other links in the description here. Some crypto projects that I'm a big fan of, and maybe actually some other things like temporary affiliate marketing things that I might do, like a psychedelics conference, which is super exciting. I think I saw some of the first names that are coming in September 2022 to Haarlem in the Netherlands. Be sure to check that out. It's going to be great, and I'm going to be there. So you got to be there. I have it. I've here. Was that it? Last thoughts. How do you feel? I think I feel great, by the way. I feel super happy. I'm super happy that I got this done. And I'm super happy that you're still watching this and that you're still here. And who knows what will come next. I think after this documentary, I think you become a little bit more vigilant whenever you see drug use or drug users being demonized. Because this is what it can lead to. And to me, drug use is just a form of behavior. Like so many other things that carry risks in our lives, whether it's bungee jumping or skiing or unsafe sex. We should not criminalize these things. I hope that much is clear. And I'm exceedingly happy that in the past 10 years since I started drug journalism, I've already seen so many things change. So let's keep that for the better. That's it. That's it. I'm gonna see you at the next video. And still plenty to tell from Southeast Asia and other places. I'm just I'm just super happy. Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks.